As has been noted several times, the bookcase behind me here is filled with all of my unpainted models. A vast collection of bunches of stuff at the bottom. There's individual models and vehicles and so on and so forth. But downstairs in a poorly lit corner of my house is a bookcase with all of my painted models, and especially at the top are the ones that I use most regularly, which means Bolt Action. And the top of that list is my Soviet Union models, and that's because I started with the Soviet Union when I got into Bolt Action. Now, a little while ago, someone did mention, ask a question of how many models do I have in total, what's a good starting number, and I will do a separate video on kind of how to get into Bolt Action in terms of how many models you need. But I think for today, I'm just going to do an overview of everything I've got, and I might even do the other nations as I've finished off a couple of them this year, as has been mentioned recently. So hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and this is my rather extensive collection of Soviet Union models for Bolt Action. And what I think would be actually interesting is not only to work out everything that I've got, but rather to actually put it into a single kind of list, as if I was going to go to a game with just an unlimited points cost and just dump everything together. What would this all count as? And I've got a collection of stuff around me, and you're probably seeing my B-roll of it nicely set out. And I realized very quickly that it's actually not as simple as you might think, because in Bolt Action in World War II, for any nation, you have models with rifles, and any model with a rifle is pretty much equivalent to any other model with a rifle, even from other nations. There are sometimes some special rules, and of course there's veterans and inexperienced as well to think about. Similarly, a model with a submachine gun. This guy and this guy the model is the same, but I could put this in an engineer squad, or I can put this in an inexperienced submachine gun squad. The models can go either way. And so collecting all of my models together, I've got a bunch with rifles, I've got a bunch with submachine guns. I do have a few others that are a little more specific, such as sniper, such as medium machine guns, such as officers. And so actually just nailing down what everything is and organizing it has been a bit of a disaster. And to kind of show that off, I'll start with what you might think would be the easy way to start, because I do have a couple of squads that are kind of modeled or painted in a specific way, and so are not interchangeable with the others. And one example of that is my NKVD here in their nice blue hats, the military police and the rest of the Soviet Union. In the game of Bolt Action, they can come in a squad of between 5 and 11 models. Any of them can have a rifle or a submachine gun, and I've given them all the SVT rifles because they've taken the cool fancy gun for themselves. And of course the squad can have a single light machine gun, so I've got that as well. But the problem then comes is I've actually not got 11 models, I've got 13. And so if I have a maxed out squad, what do I do with the other 2? Or do I just split them in half? Well, there's actually an easy way out here, because this particular model is from Bad Squiddo Games, a commissar that I've painted again with the nice blue hat. And the extra rifle model, she can be the commissar, and the extra rifle model can be her assistant in a way. So I end up with a squad of 11 with a light machine gun and a commissar with 1 assistant. Another fairly easy one to get stuck into is the free rifle squad. Any Bolt Action Soviet Union army will have the free rifle squad, and that's easy to do. So I'm just going to pick out 11 of my rifle models. I'm going to also pick out all of my ones carrying the Molotovs, because the free rifle squad can get the Molotovs. And I'm also, just for fun, because I have a flag model, I'm going to give them the little flag. Wave the flag around. But the rules for flags in Bolt Action is rubbish, and so you may as well give it to the free rifle squad, because at least you're not paying the points for it. Then there's something a little more interesting, and these are my models with cloaks. And this here, the sniper team from Bad Squiddo Games, was my very first World War II models, or at least in this scale for Bolt Action. And these are the models that got me into Bolt Action in the first place. And I could use them as a sniper team, and I often do. Sometimes I even use the assistant to the sniper. She's got binoculars. I use her as a spotter for my mortar team. But what I've also done is I've sculpted some Milliput cloaks. And for anyone who's been following my channel for a little while, they're probably giggling to themselves that I've sculpted even more cloaks. But I've made up to now 7 models here with cloaks, and these are my scout squad essentially. Now a few of them do have scopes on their rifles, the Bad Squiddo model and 2 others. So I've got three with scopes technically, and so I could use them, kind of swap them in as snipers if I wanted to, or I could just use them as the scout squad, and they've got the scopes because it's for observation rather than for sniping. So they wouldn't get the special rule for snipers if counting as a scout squad. Next, this one did have to be squeezed a little bit, and that is my body armor models. So I did a video a little while ago of all of the spare arms and spare heads that come with plastic kits. What do you do with them? Do you throw them away? Well, not always. I 3D printed a bunch of bodies and used up the spare arms and heads. And one thing I did, I printed off a bunch of them with body armor to make tank rider squads or engineers. I also have in amongst them one model with Panzerfaust on his back, one model with a flamethrower, and both the Panzerfaust and the flamethrower have to be in an engineer squad. The tank rider squad, tank rider squad can have the armor, can't have these weapon options. And then one thing that is really fun, doesn't actually have any effect on the game, but this is the Bad Squiddo mine disposal team actually, with the dog that can sniff out the explosives. That's a cool model, really like that. And again, I've got too many to be one squad, and I've got weapons that can only be in the engineer squad, and I can't separate any out to be a commissar like I did with the NKVD. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the minimum size for the engineer squad, which is 5. They get the Panzerfaust, they get the flamethrower, and then also the dog, because that's a mine clearing thing. That's more of an engineer's type of thing. And then 7 models will go to the tank rider squad. Not full squads now, and this is kind of going to be a running theme. And even talking about not full squads, I would love to actually be using my Strafbats. Now, I did a video on these. These are unarmed models essentially, and they're your political prisoners. You have put the NKVD behind them to encourage them to move forwards. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be running for my kind of massive list today. I'm not going to be running these as the Strafbat, because the way I make my artillery teams, such as my very first one here, the light anti-tank gun, this needs a crew of 3. I've got one model glued onto the base. I've got a second model with a round of ammunition. But for the third model, I can pick anyone. I can just grab, oh yeah, there's a model with a rifle, and they're in to as close protection. One of the gun crew has picked up their personal weapon. Or maybe I pick a model with binoculars, and she can hang around with them. In what will be happening today is I take a Strafbat model who doesn't have any weapon or anything in their hands, and they're going backwards and forwards carrying ammunition or supplies or whatever. Over the course of the entire army, I have used all of the Strafbat, and so I don't get to use those as my Strafbat squad. I'm using them all as artillery crews. So now that we've mentioned artillery crews, let's just run through it. I've shown the 45mm light anti-tank gun. I also have the ZiS-3 divisional gun. Base there is made from melted sprue chunks, which is an interesting one. So I have a medium and a light mortar, a medium and a heavy machine gun, the Ampulamets kind of Molotov launcher it's sometimes called, and then for the smaller teams, 2 anti-tank rifles, 1 sniper team, and this is not the Bad Squiddo one, this is the Warlord Games plastic ones. And then I could run the flamethrower as a separate team, but they're in the engineer squad. So that is all of those. And at this point, I'm starting to realise that I've got a few kind of models, a few weapons that are hanging out, and I've got too many of them. And one of the ones that's really causing a sticking point at the moment is light machine guns. The DP-28 light machine guns. And I've got 4 light machine gun teams. 4 gunners, 4 loaders for them. And I've only got so many rifle models, so what I'm going to have to do is start off nice and easy, light machine gun squad. It's one of the standard options in the Soviet Union. Squad of up to 12 with 2 light machine guns. Easy. But for the second one, I've actually run out of just rifle models, but I do have a couple of rifle models with Panzerfausts, the captured Panzerfausts taken off of German supplies and so on and so forth. The thing there is that I can't run the Panzerfaust in a light machine gun squad, but I can run a veteran squad with 2 light machine guns and up to 2 Panzerfausts, so I can fill a squad that way. And that kind of trick with sneaking Panzerfausts into a veteran squad is also how I used up all of the submachine guns. I have 12 in a submachine gun squad. It's a full submachine gun squad of 12. And then the veteran squad is all of my remaining models. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 of them. That's the minimum size. And they've got 2 Panzerfausts there. And I think that means I can pop over to my HQ units now because I've sorted everything else out. I can work out what models are left for my HQ. And I have my 2 medics models. Pretty much they can't be anything other than medics. Obviously, we've mentioned the commissar already, and then my officer. Now, the officer himself would usually have some assistance, but in this case, there's only 1 model left. And I managed to pick out the one with radio, because that's kind of a fun thing to have. Sometimes I use the radio operator as a spotter for howitzer or the mortar, but in this case, they're going to be assistant to my officer. And finally, that is all of my infantry. There's all of the not infantry, or as I like to call them, vehicles. And you would think that vehicles are going to be much easier than the infantry because I don't have to shuffle things backwards and forwards so much. But there is still some shuffling backwards and forwards. And I'm going to start off with something that's even questionable for that, and that's this, my Chernobyl ISU 152, which is of course a World War II era vehicle. It is a terrain piece, essentially. I've built it up to be covered in, absolutely caked in rust, moss, and plant life growing all over it. It's an absolute wreck. But I could run it in a game of bolt action as the ISU 152. I don't think anyone would object, just because I think it looks quite cool. I think other people might think it's quite cool as well. But it is representative of an ISU 152 because it's what it is. Post in the comments if you think I should be allowed to run this as a vehicle or if it has to stay as terrain. There is also the easy options. My T-70 light tank with the little metal plates so that I can put my magnetic tank riders on. An artillery tow, the Komsomolets, has seats so it can also transport a small squad of up to 6, the engineers or the veterans perhaps. And then things start to fall apart again because my main tank for my Soviet Union World War II would be the T-34. Now this is the plastic kit from Warlord Games with the late war upgunned turret. So this is the 85 version. But I also 3D printed an alternate turret with the earlier 76mm gun, 76.2mm gun, so that I can run this as an early war T-34. Strictly speaking, not a T-34-76, it is called the T-34 in this configuration, because that was the only variant at the time. And then when you upgun it, it becomes the T-34/85. I also have the T-34/ZP turret from Conflict 47. But let's not get too far into Conflict 47 because that would just push things a little more. I think for today, I'm going to run it with the original plastic turret, T-34-85. Another one of my vehicles that has different turret options is Stalker, my armoured car. So I've got the earlier open-topped light machine gun turret with the spare crewman sticking out the top. But I can switch out the turret for the later heavy machine guns. This is the Dushka heavy machine gun with the enclosed turrets. I think just because I like having a crewman sticking out the top, I think I'll go for the original version, and when I play, that is how I usually run it. I very rarely run the heavy machine gun. And oh, did we say options? Because here's another one with options. This is my Gaz truck fitted with the Katyusha rocket system. And also, here is my gas truck with an open bed to just be a truck, transport truck. That's less fun. So I think I'll run this today for my list with the Katyusha rocket system, and that's a kind of classic, iconic World War II Soviet thing as well. But there is one last set of vehicles that I could bring in, and we can again argue in the comments whether this is appropriate or not, but it's my smaller transport vehicles. So I have a Gaz civilian car. This is one of my old 3D prints. Apparently this is a Soviet clone of the Ford something or other, but certainly kind of World War II era, could be used as a staff car or just a civilian vehicle that they've picked up along the way. And I also have 2 Jeeps, probably Lend-Leased from America. These are 3D printed as well. They're not as nice. There's no markings on these, so I can use these Lend-Lease with any of my... I can use them with Americans or the Brits or the Soviet Union. Do they count as my Soviet models? I'm not convinced, but as they're only 20 points, 17 points each, I may as well just include all of them because it's not going to make that big of a difference. So is that now finally everything? I think it is. I think that is everything. That was excessive, but now I have to go and lay it all out to do all of the B-roll that you've already seen. Yeah, good grief. There's just a lot of stuff here. Okay then, I have spent the last little while putting together the army list on Easy Army. Now there's a bit of a discussion in the community at the moment that the Warlord Games books, the Warlord Games app, Easy Army, Battle Scribe, and there's another option as well, I can't remember off the top of my head. None of them agree with each other on the points values, on the rules, on the options for every single unit. Generally speaking, they all agree on most of it, but every now and again there's like a points cost is different or an extra rule is there or not on one option. Generally speaking, the community is pretty happy to just run with Easy Army. It's pretty consistent. It has nearly all of the options. There's a few books like Case Blue isn't in there yet as far as we know, but it's also very easy to use and very accessible for everyone. So I've gone with that. And as you can probably tell by the sheer quantity of models that I have to throw in, the sheer number of units, I have had to split the army into 2 platoons. The first platoon is a standard reinforced platoon, and I've squeezed absolutely as much as I possibly can into there. And the second platoon, because there's quite a few vehicles, I have had to take a tank platoon. A few infantry squads and weapons teams that have snuck in there, namely medium machine gun, light mortar, and the 45 anti-tank gun. 2 of each of the options there, 2 machine guns, 2 anti-tank guns. The second one of each has to go in the second platoon. But in a tank platoon, every infantry squad needs a transport and every artillery piece needs a tow. That's okay because I had all those little vehicles, the jeeps and such. So one of the jeeps will tow the anti-tank gun, the light anti-tank gun, that's fine for a jeep to tow. The mortar and the machine gun go in the other jeep and the staff car. But I couldn't fit all of the infantry squads into the first platoon either. Now the first one, really easy choice. The tank riders with the body armor, they get to use the T-70 as a transport vehicle. The submachine gun squad, the big submachine gun squad, I can take those as tank riders as well, and they can use the T-34 as a transport vehicle. And then the final option, probably the engineer squad or maybe the small veteran squad, one of the little squads, can ride on the Consomolets, the T-20. And that is the last transport vehicle I have, and so it is that close to being acceptable, but it works, it all goes together in the double platoon. Yeah, good grief, it's all in there, it's all in there in 2 platoons, all of my Soviet models, of which there are loads. But how many points is it? Well, for those that don't know, a standard average game of bolt action is 1,000 points. That's the basis by which these games are played. And the number can vary between games, and so you can't necessarily say, oh, that's 1,000 points, that's half what 40k is, so you're playing a half-size game. That's not how it works. A full-size 40k game is 2,000 points, a full-size bolt action game is 1,000 points. They are equivalent. It's like exchange rates and all of that kind of stuff. That's not important. The important thing is 1,000 points, standard game. Small games, commonly you see 800-point games, 750-point games. We often do 600-point games to teach new players. Kind of get that small-size game to get people into the game. And then the larger games are often 1,250, 1,250 points. And some people play 1,500 points, which is a pretty big game. I have heard of bigger than that, but that just gives you the idea of 1,000 points, standard game, 750 and 1,250, that's the kind of small and big games. That's the range you're looking at. My entire Soviet collection comes to a total of 2,632 points, which is a fair amount. So yes, not only could I quite easily play a game with just about any combination of models I like, I can almost certainly make a decent matchup between two platoons and play against myself. And I would even have 600 points left over. I'm not doing that. That's a waste of my time. That's silly. But yeah, that's my Soviet Union army complete. And I definitely am not, but haven't bought any more. Yeah, I might have bought a few more models. I've got some cavalry as well. It just never ends, does it? For now, my army sits at 2,632 points. Until I build and paint some more, it will probably go up. But then, as I have shown in my videos over the last couple of years, I'm playing all of the other factions, or at least the main nations of World War II, with... I'm aiming to have at least 1,000 points of each, although some of them have spiraled. So if you would like to see my collections of my other nations, I have the largest collection for the Allied nations. I do have all of the Axis nations as well, the main three for each. So if there is a nation that you'd like to see me go through all of my models for, do let me know in the comments below, and I might consider doing that. But for now, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.